Today I'm doing my first ever post-theater reaction. I'll be talking about Alien Romulus today, and I'll also be ranking the entire Alien franchise. So let's rock this. Hi everyone, how you doing? Welcome back. I'm Fuzz, and today I'm doing something a little bit different that I haven't really done on this channel before. I've got my first ever post-theater reaction for you guys. I'm going to be talking about the new Alien movie, Alien Romulus, which I was super excited about, and I got a chance to see it day before yesterday in the theater, Dolby Cinema. It was awesome with the full Atmos soundscape. Oh, it was amazing. I was originally going to record this video as soon as I got out of the theater, once I got home, but I ultimately decided to take a day or two to kind of chew on it and kind of process what I had seen, just to confirm that the strong feelings I have for this film are indeed accurate, right? Because sometimes you get really pumped up about a film like as soon as you see it, and then once you've chewed on it for a couple days, you don't feel as strongly about the film. The opinion that you had immediately upon getting out of the theater kind of wanes a little bit. That is not the case here. Sitting on this for a couple days only confirmed everything I felt immediately upon exiting the theater. And then after that, I'm also going to be ranking the entire Alien franchise. Now, if you're new to the channel, if you just stumbled across this channel for the first time, this is not my usual thing that I do on this channel. I don't really consider myself a movie reviewer. This is a physical media discussion channel. And while I do talk about the movies I love, usually it's in the context of physical media, and usually it's older catalog movies. I don't really spend a whole lot of time on this channel talking about new movies, particularly if they're in the theater. This is the first time I've ever done that. But I'm such a huge fan of this franchise. Those of you who are regular viewers know that Alien and Aliens are two of my favorite movies of all time. The Alien franchise is my favorite franchise of all time. So given the timeliness of the new release, I just had to get on here and talk about Alien movies, really any excuse to talk about Alien movies, and I'm going to jump on it right away. Plus, it's not often that we actually get a new Alien movie, right? That doesn't happen very often. What have we had? Something like 7 Alien movies, like in the official franchise. We've had like 7 Alien movies in 45 years. So yeah, whenever there's a new Alien movie, I get pretty excited about it, but I was especially excited about this particular movie. Now, before I get into my post-theater reaction here for Romulus, we've got a new Fuzz Club member I want to give a quick shout out to. Mike Boone just became the most recent addition to the Fuzz Club. Mike, thank you so much for becoming a Fuzz Club member. I really appreciate the added support of the channel. I know we've chatted a little bit here, and I've really enjoyed that, and I look forward to chatting with you more moving forward. But thank you so much for that support, Mike. It really does mean a lot to me. And if any of you out there want to know more about the Fuzz Club, there is a link in the description you can click on, or just click that join button below and it'll bring up all the membership information for you. By the way, if you're worried about spoilers, you don't have to worry about that. My comments here on Romulus are going to be absolutely spoiler-free. So day before yesterday, my wife and I celebrated our anniversary by going to see Alien Romulus, and I'll tell you up front, we both had an absolute blast with this movie. It is an excellent, well-executed film that I personally think is absolutely worthy of sharing the same universe as Alien and Aliens. Now, my wife isn't nearly as big of a fan of these films as I am, so she hadn't actually seen the films for a while before we went to see Romulus. Now, she doesn't dislike the Alien movies. She's just not as into them as I am. She doesn't watch them several times a year like I do. So she didn't necessarily pick up on all the different Easter eggs and cool fan references that I did. And there are a lot of Easter eggs in Alien Romulus. If you know these films well, you're going to pick up on so many fun little references, both visual and verbal, little nuggets of fan service that I think are perfectly appropriate for the film. And when I say fan service, keep in mind that I actually mean that as a compliment with regard to this particular movie, because it was all done very tastefully, and honestly, I was all smiles the whole time. I was loving it. Alien Romulus really is a love letter to fans of the franchise. And I say that, I don't mean that in a cheesy way. It was all done in a very natural and respectful way. It was respectful of the source material. It was respectful of what had come before. For example, they worked in a lot of classic lines from the first couple films into the dialogue for Romulus. And most of the time it worked really well, and it didn't feel contrived or forced or cheesy in any way. I mean, there were a couple instances where maybe they took it a little too far and it was kind of straddling the line of cringe, but that's just going to depend on your perspective. Not everybody's going to feel the same way. But this movie has so many positive attributes to it, so many good things going for it, that this minor issue of maybe taking it a little too far with the fan service, that didn't really take anything away from the movie for me personally. Yeah, a couple moments where, yeah, maybe a little bit cringe, but for the most part, it wasn't a deal breaker for me at all. Now, initially, a few months back here, I wasn't really sure what to expect from Fede Alvarez, the director of Alien Romulus. I hadn't really seen any of his work prior to that. But I wanted to get to know the director a little bit more going into Alien Romulus. So I bought Don't Breathe and Evil Dead 2013, and I watched him before going to see Alien Romulus, just so I could be familiar with his work and his style. I hadn't seen either of those films before, but I was very impressed with the work Fede Alvarez did on those films. Don't Breathe is a really good film, and I even liked Evil Dead 2013. Even though I'm not the biggest Evil Dead fan, I thought he did a good job with his remake of Evil Dead. I mean, just on the strength of those two films, Fede Alvarez clearly struck me as a very competent director who knows what he's doing. And I gotta say, with Alien Romulus, Fede Alvarez absolutely nailed the aesthetics, the atmosphere of the alien, the whole Alien universe. He absolutely nailed it. Alien Romulus looks like an Alien movie. And of course, that is key here, right? The amazing set design and incredible attention to detail gives us a visual feel here with Alien Romulus that I think perfectly matches what we saw in those first two classic Alien films. Romulus looks like a movie that belongs in this universe. You get that cool analog vibe, that almost kind of low-tech, industrial, but still futuristic at the same time vibe. Yeah, you definitely get that with Alien Romulus. The sets and the ships, they all look like they were created by the same company, the, of course, Weyland-Yutani Corporation. The technology and different devices that they're using all have that same analog feel that the first couple Alien movies had, which if you contrast that with Prometheus, which didn't do that, right? Prometheus, it looked like the tech they were using looked much more advanced than what we got in Alien and Aliens, right? And I think that was kind of a mismatch there. I think that was an error that Ridley Scott made in Prometheus, is the tech in Prometheus looks way more advanced than anything they're using in Alien or Aliens. So I love that Fede Alvarez kind of returned us back to that kind of analog feel of the first couple films. The overall aesthetic in Alien Romulus is just absolutely on point. Now, one of the things I love about this new Alien movie is that they went all in on practical effects. And it's just awesome. Holy crap, does it look good. You can tell they went all in on practical effects. Now, don't get me wrong, there is some CGI in the movie, and not everyone is going to necessarily dig how the CGI was used in this film. But outside of a couple notable instances, I would say the CGI is relatively minimal in this film. It's really used more as a tool to augment and enhance existing practical effects, right? And from what I've read, Fede Alvarez tried to do as much as possible with real in-camera practical effects for this movie. In fact, let me read a little something here that I came across when I was looking into this film a little bit more. There's a great little article from Bloody Disgusting where Fede Alvarez explains his approach to making this movie, because this guy, I mean, from what I can tell, this guy seems to be the real deal. This guy seems to be a very competent director who knows what the fuck he's doing. And the headline for this article is, "We built every creature. Alien Romulus goes heavy on the old school practical effects." And it reads as follows. Fede Alvarez spoke about the practical approach of Alien Romulus in a chat with the Hollywood Reporter last month. He told the outlet, for the creatures, we brought in all the guys from Aliens. They were in their early 20s when they made Aliens, and they were part of Stan Winston's special effects team. And now we had them at the top of their game. They have their own shops, and so we brought them all together to work on all the creatures because we went with all animatronics and puppets at every level. Alvarez continues, I have this obsession with no green screens. So we built every creature and set, he continued. Everything had to be built so we were really living and breathing in those spaces. But I'm not an anti-CGI guy. I still do visual effects shots in my movies to this day. I'll cut and do VFX shots on my computer sometimes. So it's just whatever is best for the shot, and when it comes to face-to-face encounters and moments with creatures, nothing beats the real thing. For the sets, we built spaceships and we built miniatures. We went back to all of that. And then we figured out ways to marry it with the CG world. There's some things that only CGI can do for scope and for the scope and movement. So it really has to be the right tool for the shot. Ideally, you should never feel like you're watching CG. Ideally, there should be nothing there where the audience goes, well, that was clearly CG. It should always feel practical, but I prefer practical because I want to see it when I'm there on set. That is exactly the kind of thing I want to hear from a director, especially any director that's going to take on an Alien movie. I mean, Fede really did focus on all the details. The sound design, for example. The sound design, they actually went back to the original audio from, 45 years ago, from the original Alien and Aliens movies. They actually used some of the sound effects from that original audio from those first two movies. And you hear them kind of interspersed throughout the film. Another example, we got that spiral circular hatch from the first movie. Like that appeared. I'm talking about the part where Dallas is in the air ducts in the first movie, and he's having them close those little spiral circular hatches behind him. Yeah, well, those exact hatch designs appeared in Alien Romulus. Or there might be tiles on a wall that looked like something from, the first Alien movie. There's just so much attention to detail in Romulus and so many little things to notice, especially if you know those first two films like the back of your hand. A quick note about the gore level with this film, because some of you might be curious about that. I didn't know what to expect. Having just watched Evil Dead 2013, Fede Alvarez's remake of Evil Dead from 2013, having just watched that like 2 days before I went to see Alien Romulus, I wasn't sure what to expect with the gore. I thought it might be pretty over the top because Evil Dead 2013 is really pretty intense on the gore. It's pretty over the top. So I thought we might get something like that with Alien Romulus, but it turns out we didn't. The gore is not nearly as intense as something like Evil Dead 2013. Now, there is a fair amount of gore. I mean, you still get your gore, the kind of gore that you would expect from an Alien movie, and maybe even a little bit more. But it's not like completely over the top for the most part. I mean, there's a couple instances where, I don't know, some of you might consider it over the top depending on your perspective. But the gore in Alien Romulus is not nearly as intense or as extensive as what Fede Alvarez did with his Evil Dead remake. Now, that said, I do consider Alien Romulus to be more along the lines of sci-fi horror, like Alien, than the sci-fi action of Aliens, right? I mean, that's the key contrast there between the first and second movie. One's more sci-fi action, one's more sci-fi horror, right? Well, I felt like Romulus was definitely more of a sci-fi horror thriller than sci-fi action. I'd say it's closer to Alien in terms of the horror factor than it is to Aliens, but the pacing is actually probably a little closer to Aliens than Alien. So more of a horror film, but a pretty brisk pace through the film. Romulus doesn't have the same type of slow burn buildup that Alien has. For like, what is it? Like the first 45 or 50 minutes or so of Alien, it's, it's kind of a slow burn until it really kicks into gear. Romulus kicks into gear a little bit faster. It does have a little bit of a build-up where everything is kind of established. You get kind of the premise of the story. But then you're off and running probably within like 20 minutes or so. And from that point, it's definitely a very intense but super fun ride. Let me touch on the actors briefly here. I really like the lead actors in Romulus. I thought they did a great job. I especially like Kaylee Spaney. I had never heard of her before. From what I understand, I guess she's in the movie Civil War, but I didn't really have a whole lot of interest in seeing that film, so I was not aware of who she is. I don't know anything about her. So this was my first time seeing her in anything, and I thought she was a very good pick for this film. I thought she did a great job with the role she was given. She's essentially the Ripley type character in this movie. Some big shoes to fill, no doubt. But yeah, I thought she handled it wonderfully, and I'll look forward to seeing what other movies she does after this, because she caught my attention with this one. Her performance was perfectly appropriate for the movie. And David Johnson was excellent as well, playing the synthetic in this movie. He actually did a great job with this role. I'd never heard of him either. I don't think I've ever seen him in anything, but he did an amazing job with the role. In fact, some people might say he did a better job than Kaylee Spaney. I mean, he's just a good actor, and I was impressed with what I saw from him. I feel like we got some good characters overall in Romulus, but especially with the leads, but really the whole cast, for the most part, I thought the cast was very workable. Didn't really have a problem with the cast. There was no person in the cast that was making me cringe too much. I felt like we got some good quality characters overall in this movie, but particularly with the lead characters. I thought they did a great job. Now, I'm not going to say too much about the plot here, but for those who don't know, if you haven't heard, this essentially takes place about 20 years after the events of the first Alien movie, which makes it about 37 years before the events of Aliens. And that's really all I'm going to say. It's just so you have an idea of where this falls in the timeline. But it is a separate, standalone story, It is connected to the other Alien movies, but it is its own standalone story, and technically you could watch this film without having seen any of the others, although I personally wouldn't recommend it. I mean, why wouldn't you want to see Alien and Aliens before watching this one? I would think anybody would want to, but it's not necessary to be able to be entertained and enjoy this film. There's really a little bit of everything in this film in terms of like how much of the Alien franchise is touched on. While much of the film pays tribute to those first two Alien movies, it really is a tribute to the entire franchise, right? And they draw in elements from the prequels as well, from the Ridley Scott movies, Prometheus and Alien Covenant, and they fill in some of the gaps in what we know, and they really just kind of tie everything in together nicely with Romulus. I mean, they really were able to pull in aspects from the entire franchise without it coming off as a jumbled mess. They expand on the alien xenomorph lore and mythology, and we learn more about the xenomorphs, and we learn more about the life cycle as well. So we learn some new things in this movie that we haven't learned previously. And I think Fede Alvarez was able to pull off a really tricky kind of balancing act here. He was able to give us a great standalone story that was fresh and kind of different, while at the same time still retaining all the essential DNA of what you would expect to see in an Alien movie. In other words, Romulus is not just a rehash of what's come before. Contrary to what some critics out there have said, that's not what's going on at all. It's a love letter to fans, right? The movie is a love letter to fans. Fede and his crew managed to deliver a new, inventive, and even bold story and angle that also simultaneously taps into deep nostalgia and feels very familiar at the same time. Everything about this movie felt familiar, but he was also able to give us something a little different in the story that we hadn't gotten before. They created a minimalist standalone story that was very simple, but at the same time also very effective, very compelling, and relentless. And along the way, we learned some new things about this universe, about this world that we didn't already know. And that was awesome. Plus, there are some fun twists and turns in the story as well. Of course, I'm not going to give any of that away. You just got to check it out for yourself. And my advice would be to not even read any synopsis. Just go in blind. I think this is the kind of Alien movie that fans have deserved and waited for a long time. Now, I say Alien is my favorite franchise, but that's mainly because of the strength of those first two films. I'll be the first to admit that the other entries in the franchise aren't anywhere near as good as those first two installments. I don't mind the other sequel and prequel films in this franchise. I mean, some I like more than others. I was entertained enough by Prometheus and even Alien Covenant, but let's face it, none of the other Alien films even come close to holding a candle to those first two classic films. Well, I think Alien Romulus comes far closer than any of those other installments to matching the vibe and spirit of our beloved first two classic films. And I'm just going to come right out and say it. I think Alien Romulus is hands down the best Alien movie we've seen since James Cameron's Aliens. And I really can't wait to get my hands on a 4K physical media copy of this film once it's released. Now, I know I've painted a pretty rosy picture here of this film. I really did enjoy it that much. But in the interest of being at least somewhat fair here, there are a couple things in this movie that some people might consider flaws. I think they're relatively minor issues. There were nothing that really detracted from my enjoyment of the film at all. But I could totally understand how these things might bug some people. There's one instance in particular, which I kind of alluded to earlier in the video, but one instance in particular where the way they used the CGI might not sit well with everyone. Now, I don't want to give any spoilers at all, so I'm not going to tell you what these things are, but there are a couple potential flaws in the film that some people just might not dig. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It's not a perfect film. It's a damn good film, but I'll admit, it's not a perfect film. But I do think it's perfect for the time we're living in. I think it's what the Alien franchise needed at this time. So wrapping up my thoughts here, what can I say? I mean, if you're a fan of the Alien franchise, if you're a fan of those first two Alien movies, you have absolutely got to check out Alien Romulus. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was a really good film. I was pleasantly surprised. I feel like we finally got the kind of Alien movie that we've needed for a long time. You know, we finally got something that fans can really sink their teeth into and take some pride in. You know, Fede Alvarez is just such a great director, and I just love everything he did with this Alien movie. I mean, the guy is clearly a fan of these movies, you know? It didn't feel like you were watching some guy that was just a hired gun, you know, coming in and doing his own hack job on Alien. It wasn't like that at all. This guy put some love into it. You can tell this guy has a passion for the Alien movies that I think really helped in making this film a success. And when I say success, I mean, just from my perspective, I think the film was a home run. I really do think the film was a home run. Overall, I've been very, very impressed with Fede Alvarez as a director. I'm definitely going to be following his career a lot more closely moving forward. In fact, I'd actually be cool if he made another Alien movie. I wouldn't have a problem with that at all, because in my mind, he showed he was definitely up to the task. There are a couple little things that some people might have problems with, but there was nothing so bad in the film that it took me out of the film. You know, that's a couple little minor issues that I can understand people making the case that, like, yeah, that wasn't cool, or that wasn't cool. But honestly, they're minor in my mind, because this film has so much great stuff going for it. There are so many positive attributes in Alien Romulus that this is going to sound like kind of a dickhead thing to say, but I don't I don't understand how any true fan of Alien movies could be disappointed in Alien Romulus. I just don't see it, you know? I mean, maybe you're not like as excited about it as I am if you're a big, big Alien fan, but I can't imagine you really being disappointed with it. I mean, it really just is a great movie. It was well done. There's so much to sink your teeth into as a fan. I mean, everywhere you look, there's some reference to something in the past, you know, and it's not always so in your face. It's subtle stuff that's, you know, happening in the background, or with the set design, or, you know, with, like I said earlier, the way a hatch door was designed. There's just a lot of really cool attention to detail that you can tell someone who cares about this property was working on it. And that's how I felt about Fede Alvarez. I feel like this guy knows what he's doing. This is a guy who has a love, a passion for these movies, and he put a lot of love and passion into his creation. And I got to give him big respect for that. I think he did a great job. Okay, so let's get into the Alien franchise ranking now. I'm going to rank all the films in the Alien franchise, although I'm not going to be including Alien versus Predator or Requiem in this ranking. I don't really consider the AVP movies to be canon. I don't consider them to be proper Alien movies, so I will not be including these. However, I will say I don't mind the first one of these. I don't think I've ever seen the second one, Requiem, but I don't mind the first one of these. I thought it was okay, you know, mildly entertaining. It was directed by Paul Anderson of Event Horizon and Resident Evil fame. So, and that's the main reason I bought it, because he was directing it, and I have a number of his movies. But yeah, I mean, it's okay, but I don't really feel like it belongs in the proper Alien franchise ranking. So I won't be including these. So that gives us 7 Alien films here to work with. And coming in at my number 7 is Alien Resurrection, which I have in this on Blu-ray in this Alien Anthology box set. I used to have that. Well, I think I probably still do in storage. I used to have the Alien Quadrilogy box set, the original DVD Alien Quadrilogy. I absolutely loved that set when it first came out. But then I stepped away from collecting for a number of years, and I had never gotten around to upgrading it to Blu-ray at the time, before I went on my collecting hiatus. So when I got back into collecting a few years ago, one of the first things I wanted to do was make sure that I had upgraded that old Quadrilogy DVD set to Blu-ray. So I think I got this used on eBay, found a good deal on it, and it's a little bit dinged up there, but you know, the discs are in great shape, and that's what matters the most, right? So, but yeah, Alien Resurrection, that movie is, I seldom watch it. I think I've probably only seen it maybe 2 or 3 times in my life. I mean, it's okay. I can handle it, but it's definitely my least favorite of all the Alien movies. I don't really feel, and this is, if you haven't seen Resurrection, this is kind of spoiler territory. I don't really like what they did with Sigourney Weaver in Alien Resurrection, mainly because it's not really Ripley. Right? And so we don't get the Ripley that we know and love from those first couple films, right? So yeah, I just don't like what they did with Sigourney Weaver's character in this movie. Also not a big Ron Perlman fan, and this one is just, I just don't think it's a very good movie. It's watchable, but and I can handle it to, you know, some degree, but it's also a movie that I almost never watch. You know, if I'm going to watch an Alien movie, Alien Resurrection is the last one that I would consider. So yeah, not the biggest fan of Alien Resurrection, so that comes in last place for me. Let's move on to number 6 now. which is also included in this anthology, and that is Alien 3, the David Fincher directed film. I don't know, for those of you who know, you know, there's some significant problems with Alien 3, right? Especially right at the beginning there. In fact, I gotta say something about this. So I'm gonna get into spoilers here. If you haven't seen Alien 3, you might want to skip ahead, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds or so. Here's the thing that bugged me about Alien 3. They fucked over Aliens fans big time. I mean, they shit all over Aliens fans because they killed off Hicks and Newt off screen. So, I mean, that was a colossal, colossal mistake. And it's a big part of the reason that I have a problem with Alien 3. It's just, plus it's just kind of a dreary, dark film, which I like dark. I don't mind a little bit of dreariness, but just the way this story was set up, it just didn't really do a whole lot for me. I will admit that the assembly cut that's included in here, the longer assembly cut of Alien 3, it is a little bit better, but for the most part, the film definitely has a lot of flaws, and it doesn't hold up as well now either. I mean, the visual effects that they use, just, yeah, it doesn't look really good. So this is one, Alien 3 is one I don't really watch very often. I like it slightly more than Resurrection, but yeah, it's not one that I spend a whole lot of time with. I view Alien 3 as a completely wasted opportunity. They could have done so much with that, and they could have had another hit on their hands, but they just kind of screwed the pooch with this one, right? Sorry, Fincher, but that's just the way it is. All right, and coming in at number 5, we have Alien Covenant, Ridley Scott, back in the director's chair. Now, this one, I definitely like the prequels more than the sequels of 3 and 4, right? I do think the prequels are a little better. And I didn't mind Alien Covenant. I know a lot of people didn't like this one. I didn't mind this one. I thought it was fairly entertaining. Once again, getting into spoiler territory, potentially spoiler territory here. I don't want to say too much if you haven't seen this, but the main thing I didn't like about Alien Covenant was the ending of the movie. I thought it was a little too dark for my taste. I would have liked to have seen a more positive ending than what we ended up with. The other thing that kind of bugs me about these prequel films in general, both Prometheus and Alien Covenant, is that we never got the third installment that I think Ridley Scott had planned. I think he originally had in mind that he was going to do like a trilogy, a prequel trilogy, that was going to lead us right up to the events of the first Alien film. Well, apparently Covenant didn't do too well in the theater, and I guess that third installment got shelved after how poorly this did in the theater, and that sucks. That's the main thing that bugs me, is that we never got to see all of Ridley's vision for what he wanted to do with this prequel trilogy. So that's my only main issue with Covenant. The ending of the film, I don't really care for, and the fact that we just never got another film after this. I would have liked to have seen the fully developed prequel as Ridley had originally intended. So that's my main beef with this. But otherwise, I actually do like the film. I think it's not bad. Of course, it's nowhere near the classics, 1 and 2, but as far as an Alien movie goes, I think it's fairly entertaining, and it's not terrible in my view. So yeah, Alien Covenant for my number 5. Moving on to number 4 here. Next up is Prometheus. I do like Prometheus more than Covenant. I think there's some really interesting stuff in here. And I actually saw this in the theater when I didn't see Alien Covenant in the theater. For some reason, missed that one. I don't know what was going on in my life at that time. But I did go see Prometheus in the theater, and I did enjoy it. Again, it's one of those things where I think it's a good movie, but of course it's not nearly as good as those first 2 classic films, right? It's not really in the same league. But there's a lot of interesting stuff that happens in here, and like I said, I think it's an entertaining movie. So yeah, Prometheus for my number 4. All right, and moving on to number 3, you guessed it, Alien Romulus. Yes, I really do think it's that good. I think it blows away the other titles on this list, you know, up to this point, right? I really do think Alien Romulus is a much better film than either Alien 3 or 4 or the prequel movies. I just, like I said before, I feel like we finally got the kind of Alien movie that fans have needed for a long time. Now, of course, nothing is ever going to be as good as, you know, those first two original classics, right? I mean, that's a really high bar. But I think Alien Romulus comes about as close as you could. So, you know, based on everything that's been released so far. So, but, you know, you just heard me talk a whole bunch about Romulus, so I love it. I really do think it's the best Alien film since James Cameron's Aliens. So yeah, Alien Romulus for my number 3. All right, and of course, we're getting into the top 2 here. I'm not going to spend much time on these because I've spent a lot of time on them before in other videos. But of course, Alien, I don't know, for some people, this is number 1. For me, it's number 2, right? But it's very, very close. I love both Alien and Aliens probably about equally. But yeah, if I had to rank them, this one falls just a hair below Aliens for me. So yeah, I love this. What can you say about this? Absolute classic. Yeah, Alien for number 2. And then, of course, that does leave Aliens for number 1, right? And this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody who's been watching this channel for a while. I've said for a long time, this is my all-time favorite movie. So yeah, this was going to be number 1. Just classic stuff. So that's it. That's my Alien franchise ranking today. Okay, so that about wraps it up for my post-theater reaction for Alien Romulus, as well as my Alien franchise ranking. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Have you guys seen Alien Romulus yet? If you have, what did you think? Do you agree with my assessment here? And if you haven't seen it, did this reaction video pique your interest at all? I always love chatting with you guys and hearing from you guys, so make sure you leave me some feedback down below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Thank you so much for watching today. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.